Hey everybody, it's Don. On this episode of The Naturalist, I'm going to show you what I've been up to in terms of bonsai preparations for the season. It's late April 2025, and this is a time that most bonsai enthusiasts wait patiently for all winter. So let me show you what I've been up to and what I hope to achieve over the next few months. So let's go. The first tree I'm going to show you today is a new tree to my collection as of last fall. So in the fall, it's a good time to go find trees on sale at big box stores or nurseries or what have you who are trying to get rid of their inventory, and you can often find trees for half the cost you'd find them earlier in the season. And so this is a tree I picked up in that way. This is a Fothergilla majus, common name witch alder, or just commonly called Fothergilla. And this is an ornamental shrub. It's native to the southeastern US, but has grown pretty much across the country as an ornamental. It's a pretty small shrub. It has these very interesting, flowers that are very fringe-like with very long stamens, white stamens. And this one only has a few flower heads on it because I trimmed off some of the flowering buds last fall. But basically this is a shrub. This will never develop a very large trunk. I'm just going to grow it as a rounded kind of broom style bonsai, probably not to get much larger than it is right now. And so all I have done to it so far is wire out some branches to pull them down and pot it up into, this is a plastic training pot. And just to get it established. One note, when I bought this tree, it was in a typical 1 gallon nursery pot or so. And when I first put it into this pot in the fall, I cleaned out the roots and it was filled with grubs, white grubs. And those white grubs had eaten many of the fine roots on this tree. So it was mostly left with only larger roots. I was a little concerned that it wouldn't root very well. But as you can see, it's leafing out really nicely. As I cleared out the old soil during that potting session, I made sure I killed every white grub I could find and basically cleaned out the roots, trimmed them, got it in this pot, and it's doing quite well. So I'm quite happy with it. This is a shrub that likes high light conditions. It likes pretty wet soils, so it would in the wild be kind of a wetland associated shrub on wetland edges. This happens to be a cultivar that was identified in the Cincinnati area. It's called Mount Airy is the cultivar. So I'm really excited about this. Last fall, these leaves turned a really interesting color, orangish red color in the fall. So they also have a very beautiful fall coloration to them. And so this one also had a kind of an interesting network of roots. They're kind of strangling looking, but they're not really. And so because this thing will never develop a very large trunk, I decided to leave these curly roots at the base there. I did notice when I brought it out, a little squirrel chewed on it, so I hope that doesn't continue. But nonetheless, that's my first tree I'd like to show you for the season. The next tree I'd like to show you is an American beech tree I collected in the field, in the wild, almost exactly 1 year ago. And my goal with it last year, I just put it in the bottom of a plastic pot with some soil, general soil, was just to keep it alive. And it did stay alive. It leafed out. I held on to some of the leaves it had when I collected it, and it leafed out a little bit more. Didn't grow extensively, but I overwintered it, and then this winter, about a month ago or so, I put it into a proper bonsai pot, and have been waiting patiently to see what happens with it. Along the way, I did a little bit of design work. I've styled a few branches, pulled some things into better positions. And this tree is a little tall for a bonsai. It may eventually get cut down some distance from the top, depending on how it fills out the canopy. But I didn't want to do that just yet. I wanted to give it a chance to fill out to see whether I could maintain it at about this height or perhaps shorten it. But we are at the point where it is breaking bud. I'm really pleased to see that. These are the long cylindrical cigar-shaped buds of a American beech. and they are just about breaking bud. There's one up here, it's kind of probably hard to see on camera, with the leaf tips just starting to stick out of it. So I was really hopeful that this thing would survive the winter, survive the repot, and I'm really excited about this tree. Again, I showed this last summer in my bonsai update. This tree is probably 25 to 30 years old, given where it was collected and how the conditions in which it was growing. Has really nice movement to the trunk here, some nice nabari, some nice surface roots here. And I think it sits in this pot very nicely too, with that sweeping trunk. It's a little straight up here, but depending on how this canopy fills out, that may occlude a lot of that. So I'm really excited about this one. And it's in about 2 weeks, this thing will be fully leafed out, and it'll almost be time to prune it, actually. So, okay, that's my American beech. Next up, we have one of my 2 Barron's ashes. This is an Asian ash species, Fraxinus baroniana. And these trees, both of the trees that I have, are probably about 15 to 18 years old. And I was growing them in pots for years, and just relatively recently brought them into bonsai styling and so forth. This is one that I just converted from just a large nursery pot into a proper, well, this is still a training pot, bonsai training pot, but a more proper pot for a bonsai. And what you can see here is this tree is just leafing out now. Okay, this makes fine compound leaves, and these ashes, both of my ashes this year, told an interesting story. So I had most of my bonsais in the garage over the winter, an unheated garage, just to protect them from the worst of the freezing that we can get. And we had a hard winter in this area last year. So, and then I brought them out about a month ago. I thought we were through the worst, and they hadn't budded out yet, and so that would further delay their budding until after, freezing was no longer a risk. But lo and behold, they started to break bud and they froze. All right, I missed the one night I should have brought them back in, and they froze. I've had that happen before, and I've known with these ashes that they will bud back out. In fact, that's almost like an very early season pruning is what that is. So other secondary buds have all broken, and as you can see there, this tree is about to look great here shortly. I did a little bit of wiring to this to put some movement, twists and turns into some of the branches here. I'll show you both sides here. I believe what I was showing you will be the front before. That would be the back side. But really interesting nabari here, these high roots. There's a little bit of a gap under these roots too, that it could almost be a root over rock sort of style eventually, although I'd have to make kind of a custom rock to fit in there. And also, this is about as tall as I think this tree will be, maybe a little bit taller. I'm going to keep it about like this. So I am expecting some bud breakage here in these stems to give me a little bit more lateral branching and to fill out this canopy. But really excited about these trees as well. This one and the other Barron's ash that I have, which all I did with that one was repot it. Because with this dense compound leaf foliage it has, they transpire quite quickly. And so I found that other Barron's ash I have that was in a relatively small pot dried out very quickly. So I put it in a little bit of a larger pot. I could show you that here in a second, but so Barron's ash, that's number 3. The next tree I'll show you is this Chinese juniper in a cascade style. This is the only tree I bought that was semi-styled as a bonsai before I took it into cultivation myself. And so all I've been doing is training it to grow further into cascade style. It was just simply a bent over sapling. This year I've added some wire to put a little bit more movement in the main stem there. It was pretty straight previously. I've also pulled out some of these branches that will eventually become more developed pads with time. Then I also repotted it in this round taller pot, which I think works well. Typically you put cascade style trees in square pots, taller than average pots, but squarish. Although I think this round pot works quite well. And again, I got this at a big box store. It wasn't very expensive at all. I think it works quite well for this juniper. And as you can see, it is budding out profusely, and I will allow that to happen. I've already done a little bit of work on these pads to pull them out and flatten them out. But as they bud out, I will continue to pinch buds and things to further refine those pads with time. And so this is a Chinese juniper that I've now had in my collection for about, let's see, about 3 years, 3 to 4 years. 4 years. Okay, onward. Next is this dwarf Alberta spruce that I've styled into a windswept style. And as you can see, it is budding out profusely right now. It's doing very well. I have not repotted this tree since I first did it a year ago. And all I'm gonna do, and I'll do soon, is pinch back some of these new shoots, probably about half their length, you know, just to keep things in shape. All right, just pinch them out like that, this fresh young growth. And I have a few branches I need to, that are in the interior of this structure that I need to remove. But one thing I did have to do with this tree is that the wires I used to style the tree were biting into the bark quite a bit. Okay, so I have some scars of that, which is oddly something that's kind of acceptable in evergreens, conifers, but much less acceptable in deciduous trees. Nonetheless, it was getting too severe, so I had to unwire the tree. But I've noticed with these spruces that their branches don't set for probably a couple of years. I unwired one of these last summer that had been wired for about a year, and the branches kind of sprang right back upright. So I had to rewire it. In fact, I did that in time-lapse photography last year. So what I did is I unwired the branches that were the worst, and instead attached guy wires. If you can see here, these guy wires, which I basically created a coil with the wire, corkscrewed the wire into the soil to hold it, and then created a little hook to hold down the branch. All right, now I've done that with 2 major branches, but then the branches above them were doing the same thing. So I wired those branches to those branches as well. And so it's that will prevent the wires from being coiled around the branch and cutting into the bark, but hold down that branch into the position I want it to be in. Okay, now again, I'll go through and pinch out some buds. Now, with a windswept style, again, the idea is that this is a tree that might be growing on the edge of a cliff or on a mountainside with prevailing winds coming from one direction, right? So the branches in the leeward side of the tree are allowed to grow, but on the windward side, they get broken and battered and so forth. And so as you can see, there's a little bit of bud break on the trunk. I'm going to remove a lot of that, but I may keep a little bit of that because I kind of like that look. It almost looks like a larch would look. So I'll keep some of those little buds, keep them short, of course, but it does add a little bit of interior interest to the tree, as long as you don't let them get too big and bushy and occlude the trunk and so forth. So, and again, this rock here is both here for style, but also it's supporting this trunk on that angle. It is wired in, but you know, this severe angle, it needed that little bit of support. So I think it works pretty well in that regard. I have a few weeds I have to get out of these pots too, but that's my dwarf Alberta spruce. I have 2 more spruces in the collection, and you know, they're fun and hardy trees to play around with. Okay, on to the next. The next set of trees I'll talk about are these key limes. And so these trees I grew from cuttings from a larger parent tree. and put some movement into the trunk of this one about a year and a half ago, and it's been growing since. Key limes are really nice. They develop this white striping on their bark as they age. They're basically evergreen. Their leaves last a very long time. They fall off kind of irregularly, and they branch out kind of irregularly as well. That makes them a little bit of a challenge as a bonsai, because they're not, they're on a odd schedule. It's sort of, they're kind of indeterminate. Now these were kept inside in a growing cabinet during the winter, so they stayed green and they were growing. They actually grew quite a bit during the winter, and I actually pruned them. In this one I put a little bit of wiring to style a branch here, and I'll let this further develop with time and select branches in addition. But there's one that has that kind of movement. Then here's another that I've just, again, I just put these trees into pots. These aren't proper bonsai pots. They're just more squat terracotta pots, clay pots. So this one would be more like a formal, or perhaps an informal upright that I will continue to grow and develop as well. This one, interestingly, has a little key lime starting on it as well, right there. So there's a little baby key lime right here. All right, I harvested one off its parent tree just about 2 days ago, and it was really great. So I have several of these things. Key limes are really easy to propagate with by cutting, and so I have probably 12 more of these key limes in cultivation right now, just getting established in pots, and then and I will style some of them as well. So those are my key limes. This is a tree that I think is going to be fun. This was a volunteer ginkgo in my yard, and I found it on the back fence just about a year and a half ago. I didn't even realize it was growing there, kind of growing behind a fence. It had been there for a number of years. This is a pretty thick trunk. And when I found it, it was probably 8 feet tall, and I decided to chop it. I initially chopped it about a foot higher than what you're seeing here. And so last year it basically branched out, it budded out, branched out profusely below where I cut it. But it was too tall. It was going to be too tall with just a simple straight trunk. So what I did this late winter, or early spring here, was I chopped it a little lower. Then I got it in this interesting round pot that basically a friend of mine found from just online somewhere. And this one branch was the lowest branch still existing on the ginkgo, and it's a very interesting shape. Okay, this almost looks like a literati style of bonsai, although the trunk's a little thick up here for it. But if you can see here, there's profuse leafing and bud break happening all over this trunk. Some behind me, some down low, probably too low to do anything with, but it's budding out profusely along this trunk. And then of course this is leafing out too, this branch here. So I don't know what this thing will look like in the end, but I think this is going to be an interesting tree. It has a nice thick base. It's pretty straight here. I can live with that if I get some really interesting branching here. Most people who grow ginkgos as bonsai simply grow them as an upright tree with branches that kind of, as I've heard it described, develop a flame shape as the branches grow, and it leafs out. And then of course in the fall, ginkgos turn a very bright yellow, and they're beautiful at that time. The colors don't last long. They fall pretty quickly, but they're really beautiful in the fall. So we'll see what this thing does over the summer. I'll probably select a few branches along the way and then show it to you again after some time. The next tree is one of my smaller olive trees that I'm styling as bonsai. And this one just simply got a repot into a nicer clay bonsai pot this year. And it hasn't started to leaf out yet. Olives have to be kept indoors ideally in cool temperatures, but not freezing temperatures. So I keep them in an unheated greenhouse, unheated garage over the winter. And then they leaf out fairly late. So these things won't start to leaf out for a few weeks probably. They will flower actually, if they're going to flower, before they leaf out generally. So this one probably will not flower given its age, but it's in the process of being styled. And again, I'll probably keep this tree roughly the same size it is, with further branching and ramification with time. And I'll show you my large olive trees in just a moment. But also, in addition to all these things I've been showing you, there's more. There is more that I'm not going to show you today. But I will show you that I also have acquired, and this is just maybe a little tip, a number of small saplings like this of trees, of local hardwood, and you can get evergreens as well, from my county spring tree sale. So I acquired river birches, white oaks, red oaks, sycamores, and sassafras trees this year. And I'm going to try each of them as bonsais. So here's one I just recently potted up. It's about to bud out here shortly. And this is a red oak. Okay, it has really nice movement to the base here. And you know, I'll see what I'm going to do with these long things. Eventually, they may be pruned back. They may be styled with some more movement. I don't know. But the idea is just pot them up. Some of them I've just potted up, and the idea is to grow them out, thicken their trunk, and then start to develop them as bonsai eventually. To that end, I planted about 10 trees just in the field, in the garden, okay, in the ground, that were like this size or a little bit larger. And the goal is just to let them grow in that way for a while, to really thicken up their trunk, until I start to slowly bring them into domestication as bonsais. All right, so that's also something I've been doing this spring. And let me show you my big olive trees next. In front of us here is one of my larger olive trees. This tree and two other partners are about 15 years old now. And I initially grew them as in pots as kind of like topiary style trees. I did not apply any bonsai techniques to them. But with time, over the last several years, couple of years, I've been trying to impart more bonsai qualities to them. And so I've been doing things here recently to put some movement into the stems. I'm pruning them into an overall conical shape and selecting branches. I've had to pull a lot of the branches down because they all tend to want to grow upright, like is true for most trees. All right, so I've been doing a lot of work on these olive trees. Okay, that's one. And there are two over here. Here's one that's one of my favorites, actually. And again, these won't leaf out for a number of weeks yet. I've been patiently waiting, but doing some wiring work. I have learned that you have to be careful. You can break these branches. They're fairly stiff, and they're also very thin barked. So it's easy to break a branch when you're wiring it, or strip, girdle it with the wire itself if you're not careful, and that will kill a branch. So I also have been working on those. Here's another. All right, and then here's just a couple more of there's another dwarf Alberta spruce, and then another small one that I did on camera about 1.5 years ago, and the other Baron's ash. This is a Japanese juniper, Juniperus procumbens, cultivar Nana. So I was styling that into a cascade style. Hasn't really leafed out a great deal yet. And I have a few handful of other things. This is another key lime I'm working on. And then this is a black ash, right, that I had initially in a pot that I put in a proper bonsai pot just this winter. And so I'm patiently waiting that to leaf out for the year. Ashes leaf out fairly late, native ashes at least. As part of this spring bonsai edition, I'm going to attempt to do an air layer of an interesting American beech on a property that I own. So let me show you what I'm talking about. I'll describe what I'm going to do, and I'll show you parts of that as I go. So this is an American beech. Right, it's probably a tree of about 30 years old, maybe more. And what you're seeing here, okay, it's straight near the bottom. What you're seeing here is an area where there had previously been a vine that was constricting the growth or altering the growth of this beech in a couple places here. Now in this area, that vine was most likely Japanese honeysuckle. So on this property, we've done a lot of remediation of Japanese honeysuckle. I've got a dog barking in the background. And so when that vine twines its way around the tree and the tree continues to grow, it sort of partially girdles it. And so it expands in between where the vine is constricting it. And if that's allowed to persist, the tree can be killed by that, but you can free it. And the tree's left with this interesting growth pattern that it's going to retain, until it gets very large. I suppose eventually you wouldn't be able to see that after a while. But I have a lot of trees like this, of several species. I call them corkscrew trees. Sourwoods, beeches, other species, spice bushes. So what I'm going to try to do is, you know, this tree is interesting. It's on my property. I have a lot of American beeches. It's interesting to show people, but I don't get to show very many people this tree. So what I'd like to do is see if I can take this thing into domestication, so to speak, by making an air layer and getting this stem to produce roots, so I can take this tree into cultivation and create a very interesting field collected bonsai or yamadori. Now, what am I going to do? Well, first of all, I'm going to utilize a few tools here. Okay, this plastic bag with the soil, it's not ideal for rooting, but it's a kind of a compost heavy, bark heavy soil mix for trees. Normally you'd use a lighter, more airy, water holding type of medium, but I don't have that here. So I'm just going to try this. I'm going to use a wood chisel, and I'm going to use duct tape to wrap the whole thing up, as I'll describe, and the hammer with the wood chisel if necessary. All right, now what am I going to do to create an air layer? Well, what I'm going to do first is to girdle the tree in a band probably about 3 inches wide, right here below this interesting part. Okay, about right here. I'll basically debark the tree down to the cambium. That will allow water flow to still continue up through the tree, but it will prevent photosynthates from moving from the canopy down past that point. And those photosynthesates, carbohydrates, will accumulate right here above the portion where it's girdled. And if you wrap this and place soil or a medium around that wound, you can induce roots to form from the bark that's still living right above the girdle. Okay, now this is a process that will take many months. And so I'm going to start again just by creating a girdle, and then with this soil in this bag, I'm going to wrap that all around the tree. I'll hold it in place with duct tape and basically create a little environment there in which roots can form from the stem. We would call those adventitious roots. Also, you can use auxin, the plant hormone auxin, common rooting hormone, to enhance this process. And you would put that right in the live bark section above the cut girdled part. I don't have that today, but I can come back and apply that later if I want to. So I'm going to demonstrate the process today, and I may come back and fix it a little bit. And then I'm just going to let this go. Here we are in late April 2025. I'm going to let this go through several months and probably check it periodically, and then see what I get by the end of the summer or early fall. And at which point, if it's made enough roots, I'll cut the tree just below the girdle and get that into a potted situation. I will have to prune the canopy away at that point as well. So that remains to be seen. We're going to hope to get roots first. Again, this will not kill the tree. It obviously will create a tall stump, but the tree is alive below the girdle, and these branches will continue. The tree will survive. Hopefully we get roots and I get this thing to transplant well or transfer well to a potted situation, and I'd love to take this thing into cultivation and create a nice bonsai out of that and show it off to people. All right, so I'm gonna then take off camera now, I'm gonna first create that girdle. At this point, I've created the girdle. It was very easy to peel with the wood chisel. I didn't need to use the hammer at all. Beech is a very thin barked species. In fact, it's amazing that all of its flow of carbohydrates flows through a paper thin depth of bark, feeding the roots from the shoots. Now again, what's left is secondary xylem, the water conducting elements of the tree. So water will still move upward in this tree from the roots, but no carbohydrates will now be sent down below this girdle. And the general rule of thumb is you create a girdle that's about the width of the diameter of the tree itself, just to make sure it does not reconnect the top of that live bark to the bottom of that live bark, which can happen if there's a little bit of live phloem tissue that's left remaining. Okay, now I'm basically going to wrap this, cut this bag open, wrap it around that area, duct tape the bottom to hold it, fill it with soil around that girdle, and then close it and duct tape the top of it. It's just that simple. So again, I'll do that off camera, and I'll show you what that looks like when I'm done. And here's the finished product with that soil wrapped around that wound. And the key is to make sure that the soil is covering at least part of that live bark at the top of the wound, because that's where the roots will emerge. Now, it doesn't look pretty necessarily, but it'll do the job. And I will check on this periodically through the summer. And when I check it finally at the end of the summer and early fall, I'm going to hope there are roots in that root ball. And at that point, I'll take it to the next step. So wish me luck. I hope you've enjoyed this edition of The Naturalist, seeing a little update on my bonsai progress for the year. I'll be sure to be back again in the summer with some updates. And until next time, this is Don signing off. Take care. Bye-bye.